Hello, thanks for joining me. My name is Jessie, and this is my channel, The Caffeinated Bookworm. And today I am going to read to you from Gabriel García Márquez's Chronicles of a Death Foretold. Chronicle, singular. Chronicle of a Death Foretold. On the day they were going to kill him, Santiago Nassar got up at 5:30 in the morning to wait for the boat the bishop was coming on. He dreamed he was going through a grove of timber trees where a gentle drizzle was falling, and for an instant he was happy in his dream. But when he awoke, he felt completely spattered with bird shit. He was always dreaming about those trees, Placida Linero, his mother, told me 27 years later, recalling the details of that distressing Monday. The week before, he dreamed that he was alone in a tinfoil airplane and flying through the almond trees without bumping into anything, she said to me. She had a well-earned reputation as an accurate interpreter of other people's dreams, provided they were told her before eating, but she hadn't noticed any ominous augury in those two dreams of her sons, or in the other dreams of trees he described to her on the mornings preceding his death. Nor did Santiago Nassar recognize the omen. He had slept little and poorly, without getting undressed, and he woke with a headache and a sediment of copper stir on his palate, and he interpreted them as the natural havoc of the wedding revels that had gone on until after midnight. Furthermore, all the many people he ran into after leaving his house at 6 and until he was carved up like a pig an hour later, remembered him as being a little sleepy, but in a good mood, and he remarked to all of them in a casual way that it was a very beautiful day. No one was certain if he was referring to the state of the weather. Many people coincided in recalling that it was a radiant morning with a sea breeze coming in through the banana groves, as was to be expected in a fine February of that period. But most agreed that the weather was funereal, with a cloudy, low sky and the thick smell of still waters, and that at the moment of misfortune a thin drizzle was falling like the one Santiago Nassar had seen in his dream grove. I was recovering from the wedding revels in the apostolic lap of Maria Alejandrina Cervantes, and I only awakened with the clamor of the alarm bells, thinking they had turned them loose in honor of the bishop. Santiago Nassar put on a shirt and pants of white linen, both items unstarched, just like the ones he put on the day before for the wedding. It was his attire for special occasions. If it hadn't been for the bishop's arrival, he would have dressed in his khaki outfit and the riding boots he wore on Mondays to go to the Divine Face, the cattle ranch he'd inherited from his father, and which he administered with very good judgment, but without much luck. In the country, he wore a .357 Magnum on his belt, and its armored bullets, according to what he said, could cut a horse in two through the middle. During the partridge season, he would also carry his falconry equipment. In the closet, he kept a Mannlicher Schonar 30-06 rifle and a .300 Holland & Holland Magnum rifle, a .22 Hornet with a double-powered telescopic sight, and a Winchester repeater. He always slept the way his father had slept, with the weapon hidden in his pillowcase. But before leaving the house that day, he took out the bullets and put them in the drawer of the night table. He never left it loaded, his mother told me. I knew that, and I also knew that he kept the guns in one place and hid the ammunition in another far removed, so that nobody, not even casually, would yield to the temptation of loading them inside the house. It was a wise custom established by his father ever since one morning when a servant girl had shaken the case to get the pillow out, and the pistol went off as it hit the floor, and the bullet wrecked the cupboard in the room, went through the living room wall, passed through the dining room of the house next door with the thunder of war, and turned a life-size saint on the main altar of the church on the opposite side of the square to plaster dust. Santiago Nassar, who was a young child at the time, never forgot the lesson of that accident. The last image his mother had of him was of his fleeting passage through the bedroom. He'd wakened her while he was feeling around trying to find an aspirin in the bathroom medicine chest, and she turned on the light and saw him appear in the doorway with a glass of water in his hand. So she would remember him forever. Santiago Nassar told her then about the dream, but she didn't pay any attention to the trees. Any dream about birds means good health, she said. She had watched him from the same hammock and in the same position in which I found her prostrated by the last lights of old age when I returned to this forgotten village, trying to put the broken mirror of memory back together from so many scattered shards. She could barely make out shapes in full light and had some medicinal leaves on her temples for the eternal headache that her son had left her the last time he went through the bedroom. She was on her side, clutching the cords at the head of the hammock as she tried to get up, and there, in the half shadows, was the baptistry smell that had startled me on the morning of the crime. No sooner had I appeared on the threshold than she confused me with the memory of Santiago Nassar. There he was, she told me. He was dressed in white linen that had been washed in plain water because his skin was so delicate that it couldn't stand the noise of starch. She sat in the hammock for a long time, personification chowing pepper chowing peppercrust seeds until the illusion that her son had returned left her. Then she sighed. He was the man in my life. I saw him in her memory. He had turned 21 the last week in January, and he was slim and pale and had his father's Arab eyelids and curly hair. He was the only child of a marriage of convenience, without a single moment of happiness. But he seemed happy with his father until the latter died suddenly, 3 years before, and he continued seeming to be so with his solitary mother until the Monday of his death. From her he had inherited a sixth sense. From his father he learned at a very early age the manipulation of firearms, his love for horses, and the mastery of high-flying birds of prey, but from him he also learned the good arts of valor and prudence. They spoke Arabic between themselves, but not in front of Placida Lanero, so that she wouldn't feel excluded. They were never seen armed in town, and the only time they brought in their trained birds was for a demonstration of falconry at a charity bazaar. The death of his father had forced him to abandon his studies at the end of secondary school in order to take charge of the family ranch. By his nature, Nassar was merry and peaceful and open-hearted. On the day they were going to kill him, his mother thought he'd got his days mixed up when she saw him dressed in white. I reminded him that it was Monday, she told me, but he explained to her that he got dressed up pontifical style in case he had a chance to kiss the bishop's ring. She showed no sign of interest. He won't even get off the boat, she told him. He'll give an obligatory blessing as always and go back the way he came. He hates this town. Santiago Nassar knew it was true, but church pomp had an irresistible fascination for him. It was like the movies, he told me once. The only thing that interested his mother about the bishop's arrival, on the other hand, was for her son not to get soaked in the rain, since she'd heard him sneeze while he was sleeping. She advised him to take along an umbrella, but he waved goodbye and left the room. It was the last time she saw him. Thank you so much for joining me for Saturday Storytime. You have a wonderful day. Like and subscribe below.